Morning Artesia radio show. Mayor, that's kind of interesting to say. Mayor John Henry.
It's different,
has it
isn't
sunk in yet?
Not really. Sort of. There's been a lot of meetings about it, so it's getting there. They're getting there pretty quick. So
okay.
Yeah.
Has the council had their organizational meeting? Like, if they picked the mayor pro tem?
Yes.
And all that?
Yep. We did that last night. So
okay.
So last night at the meeting, we did elect our mayor pro temp. That'll be Jeff Yahtzee will be our mayor pro temp for this year. So that was exciting to get that done. We affirmed all of the department heads and employees last night, so that's done for the year, and moving right along, getting ready to go.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what's been the most interesting thing you've discovered that maybe you didn't know when you were on the outside before you got to be the mayor?
I don't know that there's been any huge discoveries.
Which is probably a good thing.
Yes, which is a really good thing. I think it's just interesting as you go through it to see some of the things that we're going to have to do are maybe a little more than you first anticipated. You think, oh, okay, well, maybe we can make these adjustments, but because some adjustments weren't there, and so there's been some interesting. Oh, okay, then we're going to have to figure that out before we can get to this. And so there's been a lot of that, or some of that, not a lot of it. But no, I don't think any major discoveries. Thank goodness. I was, that would have been scary to jump in and go, oh, my goodness. But no, we were, I think, fairly ready for it, thank goodness. So excited about that for sure.
And then you said the council reaffirmed the department head. So this is like the police chief, the fire chief,
fire chief, infrastructure, treasurer, clerk, all the HR, all that got reaffirmed last night. And then we do all the employees at the same time. So all that was done, and
okay.
No big shakeups. Everything's moving right along.
Well, I'm sure people probably wondered.
Yeah, I think that's
anytime there's a change,
Sure. And I know there was. I think people, you just never know. But we're ready to go.
Ready
to
go.
Business, yeah.
So Jeff will be the mayor pro tem.
He will.
And let's see, joining on the council, then this would have been their first meeting, would have been...
Wade Nelson and Dickie Townley.
Okay.
So they both were there, had a good meeting. I think they, Wade, Dickie, and I were in Santa Fe last week, Thursday and Friday. And they have a bunch of... They put on great classes to help newly elected folks, and even if you're re-elected, you probably should go every once in a while, because they go over everything, how to conduct the meeting, Robert's Rule of Order, kind of to help you understand what's going on, do's and don'ts, and so they did a good job in that class. So I think Wade and Dickie were ready anyways, but when we go to those kind of classes, I know it helped me a bunch. I'm sure it helped them a bunch, and so yeah, they hit the ground running and ready to serve. So
are there any differences in that between being a county commissioner and being a mayor or a city councilor, or is it fairly similar as far as what they teach in those classes and about procedures and so forth?
Yeah, it's a little different, obviously, because during these classes they went over a lot of, because city governments are so different, right? You've got council, mayor. You've got council. There's like 4 different governments that a city could have. So ours is, of course, council, mayor. And so they kind of went through, hey, here's how y'all's organization works. Here's how the rules kind of apply to y'all. And then they went through each one. So there's a huge difference. Whereas the county's pretty structured. All counties are pretty much the same. We operate in the same way. Some counties don't have county managers, but it doesn't really change the way we look at things. So the way the organization is set up is a little bit different. The way the meetings are run is very different, I think. Like public comment, I did have to have a point of clarification last night, because in the county, during public comment, we're not allowed to answer or respond or ask questions, which a lot of times we would like to. And so that's something we've talked about quite a bit. Whereas at the city, when you had a public comment, you were allowed to ask. So when they started asking questions, I had to say, wait.
You can do that?
Can we do that here or not? So I wanted to make sure that I clarified, hey, how does this work exactly? So, but yeah, I think that's a great thing that the city does, because there's a lot of times when there's public comment, directly applies to something, or you think, oh, well, how does this work? And you want to ask that question. And I'm really glad at the city level, you can ask that question and try to get that answer from them.
I wonder why the difference,
I really don't know. It makes no sense to me why we're not allowed to ask, because there's so many times, sometimes, and I do understand it, sometimes you don't want to get in an argument.
Right.
Well, that doesn't make sense. But I've always wondered, well, if you're just asking for clarification, or if you're asking, well, how does that affect this? Or I really wish we could ask those, because most of the time you do the public comment and then they leave. Well, then if you don't know them or you can't find them, you don't have your chance to ask them, hey, help me understand this better. So I do wish sometimes we were allowed to do that a little more, but really glad we can do it at the city. And then it helps the city, especially our city. It's not a huge city, so it's easier to have that conversation, and they leave, hopefully, at least knowing we cared enough to ask questions, and then we get our questions answered, so that maybe we can help the citizens. So I mean, that's what we're there for. So,
yeah, well, that is an interesting
so
thing.
that's a big difference, but overall, the way things are structured and run, there's just kind of depends on the organization of that city, which was interesting.
That is an interesting thing. Now, as you've started to get ready for what's going to be the agenda for the city, plus what you're working on at the county commission level, are there any issues or things that are coming up either at the city or at the county level? It's like, for example, in the county, you're one of 5 voters.
Right.
Whereas at the city, you're kind of like the tiebreaker.
Right.
You administer the meetings and make sure all the wishes of the council are carried out. Kind of like a manager, but not a direct manager, but a supervisor.
Yeah.
So and I know you thought about this when you were going to run, and I'm sure you've thought about it now that you've been elected to both of these. Do you anticipate anything coming up either at the county level or at the city level where you may have to step back and say, this is something I really shouldn't be involved in?
Right. I thought obviously we talked about it a lot, thought about it a lot before. I don't know that I would have changed a single vote I've ever cast at the commission in the 5.5 years I've been there, because the only one that would have affected RT directly would have been that GRT vote. And as mayor or not mayor, I'm still the county commissioner for Artesia. I mean, if you look at my line, so I would still have voted against that because it negatively affected Artesia, whether I was mayor or not. So that's the only one that I think someone could have said, oh, well, you have a personal interest. Well, yes, but I do on both sides. I wouldn't have wanted it as a mayor and or a commissioner, so that vote wouldn't have been affected that way. I don't really see a whole lot of votes that are going to happen that are going to be a conflict of interest or, oh my goodness, I should stay out of this one. Most of the time, we're pretty agreeable on the commission, so if there was something that could be seen as that, I could easily abstain and give my reasoning why, and it would probably still go through. So I'm not terribly worried about any controversy at the moment. Now, that could change. I mean, obviously, we have an election coming up. But out of the 2 that are running, one's unopposed and the other one isn't going to run. So, but we already know the person that's filling their spot is unopposed. So I don't see any huge shakeup.
Is it at the county?
At the county, yeah. So
yeah.
I don't see any huge shakeup that's going to change. On the prior commissions, I could have seen some things that, I mean, we weren't as cohesive and moving in some thoughts, but.
Right. And again, it's a little different process over at the city as the mayor over there. Do you, as the mayor, when the agenda is prepared for a meeting, how much influence or direction does the mayor have on what the city council agenda is going to be for a meeting?
I have pretty much everything that comes there I have to sign off on, and I look at, and we get it moving through. I mean, I would never stop shouldn't say that. Because there's some things that might be if they came up some goofy.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to.
No, I have a huge influence on what goes on the agenda and how it gets on the agenda.
Okay.
So there's some things that once it's started, you're not going to stop it. So it's not like you can stop it from being on the agenda, but I have a huge understanding of why and what time it's on the agenda.
Yeah, well, that's because it's basically a difference between being one of the voting members of a governing body versus the role of the mayor within
Right.
the council, with council mayor form of government that
Right.
that Artesia has, and the mayor only votes
Yeah.
if there's a tie, whereas on the county commission you're one of the 5 votes that get to be cast on an issue.
You know, that was one of the most interesting during the campaign. I think a lot of folks didn't know the mayor doesn't have a vote.
Right.
We do in a tie. That's it. Otherwise, you don't have a vote. So
yeah. You administer the meeting, you set the agenda, for what comes before.
And you have a lot of, I mean, obviously the mayor has a ton of things to get done. So it might not be your vote, but you're the one trying to get it done with the help of your council to even get it to the agenda. So, I mean, there's a ton of that influence, but yeah, most folks thought, well, the mayor tells you what to do. No, I mean, that's not it. It's the council has the vote, and if I came up with some goofy idea that they didn't like, they could vote it down. So, or if they came up with an idea I didn't necessarily like, they could vote it in, and we'd have to work through that.
Have to work through all that. It's very interesting. I'm sure it's been an interesting process.
That part of it's been very interesting to rethink how you got to look at things totally different on both sides, because and that's one of the forms of government, right? In the county or the cities is you could have a mayor or council. What am I trying to say? City manager, who would then step in and be more of the role of what we just talked about as the mayor. So the mayor's a different role, and so just depends on so ours is easier because we don't have a city manager. It's just council mayor. We're good to go there. And there was one that I thought was real interesting. They announce the council gets elected, and then the council picks their mayor. And I thought, well, that's an interesting, I didn't know that happened, but there is a town, and at least one in New Mexico, that the city votes on their city council, and then the city council votes on their mayor. Almost like a mayor pro temp, they elect their own mayor.
Yeah.
So,
it's interesting.
I don't know.
Now, during the campaign, one of the issues that came up was the issue of whether or not Artesia is big enough to have a city manager.
Right.
And I think you touched on it at the Ocotillo Forum, that the county has one, but you didn't. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You said that's something that Artesia needs to think about, maybe.
I think we're in that gray area at the moment, right? We're growing. So when we get bigger, what does a county manager add or city manager add? They could add that stability. So when you're having this change, you have somebody that kind of understands where the ship's going and keeps it moving. I know that's what our department heads do now, so that could be that argument. But when you get bigger and bigger and bigger, at some point, your city's going to be so big that your mayor is going to have help, or on day-to-day operations, because it's just going to get too big. So are we there yet? No, I don't think we are, but I do see a time, I hope, that Artesia grows. But it's funny when I say we're not big enough. I mean, you look around, I know Ruidoso has a manager and an assistant manager. I mean, a lot of other smaller towns do have the manager. I think we have a really good, strong city council and department head group, to where as of right now, I don't see a huge need for it. But I do hope that someday Artesia grows to where, it makes sense to have this position, because it's just become a lot.
Yeah.
Because it already is a lot. I mean, I think you could ask any of the old mayors. There's a lot to do on a daily basis. I mean, it keeps you plenty busy. But we knew that signing up, so it's not like that was a surprise to me. I don't want people to think, oh, well, look, he got elected, now he wants a manager. No, I don't. But I have always said that. I said it way before I even thought about running for manager.
Right. And we're
on the cusp of maybe having to look at that. We're not there yet.
And even when you look at the county, at one time the county did have a county manager and an assistant county manager.
Right.
But I don't think the county filled the assistant manager's position when that gentleman retired.
No, not necessarily. We didn't come with just an assistant. Wes Hooper is kind of the next in charge. I can't remember exactly what he is, but he still oversees his department. So we changed that role quite a bit, because I think even though the county's massive, we had a strong county manager, and I think That's probably a good way to look at it.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
For now.
Did you read about the congresswoman from Hawaii? Got elected to Congress, has not gone to Congress. He's a pilot for a commercial airline.
Right.
He's still flying planes.
Oh, really?
And he's proxy voting.
Oh.
You know, because
that's convenient.
Because they put the proxy vote in. Congress had never had the proxy voting. If you were going to vote in Congress, you had to be there. And because of COVID, they put in the ability for congressmen to vote by proxy. You know, so you call up AOC and say, hey, cast my vote for me.
Yeah.
And apparently this guy, that's what he's doing. He's
That's unbelievable.
where was it? I think it was either on Fox or Town Hall where I read where he's a congressman from Hawaii, and he hasn't shown up. He's still flying airplanes.
You know, that's what's so disappointing is if you get elected to serve the people, but you're obviously not too scared to be in public. You're flying planes. It's a fairly public event every time you're on the plane.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're scared of it, but you're not willing to go serve the people who just voted for you. And you saw that at here. I mean, how many of the Democrats and not as many Republicans didn't even go to Santa Fe?
Yeah.
They stayed at their house, and I can. Let's see how I want to say that. I don't necessarily understand it, but at the peak, when COVID was just starting, that first session, some people were truly terrified. Okay. But they still had such control at the House, and they do at the federal House as well.
Yeah.
You're pretty safe to have gone in. It was just a reason not to go serve your people. And I don't know. I have an issue with that. If you're elected, that's what we're elected for. I would have shown up yesterday.
Yeah.
In the middle of the pandemic, that would have been fine with me. That's what we're elected to do.
I remember talking to Representative Townsend on the radio a while back, and he said that the rules that the leadership put in place for the session were odd. And he was asking the speaker, why are you doing this? And the speaker said, well, we're afraid that you guys will flee. You know, you'll go to Texas.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
And Townsend said, no, wait a minute. Who was it that still kept coming to the state capitol during the pandemic?
Right.
When everybody else was staying at home and doing remote. He said it was the Republicans that kept coming. So
Yeah. No, I thought that was the best thing. Igor said some really winners. I mean, we should keep a book of winners, he said, but that was one of the funnier things.
Yeah.
Y'all are all going to leave. What? We're the only ones showing up, buddy. I don't know. I don't know where you're getting this. It's Democrats that do the fleeing, but
That's exactly
that's okay
right.
with us.
All right, we're going to take a break for news, and Eric Sports will come back and see what else happened at City Council last night with Mayor John Henry coming up next.
Now for a Pecos Valley News.